So carrying on from there, and even the column that I'm doing today also, there's you heard mention of Right India, and Right India is something, I'm telling you all this because it's kind of part of my columns and the book, which is a collection of my columns really. There are bits of me, there. In fact, Haruki Murakami has said that anybody who falls in love is looking for missing bits of himself or herself. So all of us are missing bits which come together to form a complete whole. And so this book, I think, has a lot of my missing bits. So talking about Right India, it is a project that I've launched with 11 popular authors, and that is my present. I've brought it here in the form of Jaishree Misra, a novelist. She has completed about 8 books, beautifully written books. I've read about 3 of them and thoroughly enjoyed them. And Jaishree Misra very kindly agreed to come and interact with me and read passages from the book. I welcome Jaishree onto the stage.
Thank you very much for a generous introduction. And thank you very, very much, actually, for choosing me to do this, what I consider a complete honor. As Sunit said earlier, I could feel the love in the room very early on. As soon as we came in and sat in that corner and people started coming up to say hello to you, all these connects of yours, all these friendships from your past. I was meeting one luminary after the other, and I thought, why has Vinita chosen me? I feel deeply, deeply honored, and I'm so pleased to be here, and so pleased to have met so many of Vinita's other friends and fans and followers. So, whenever I face any kind of crisis in my life, there's a couple of sort of go-to people that I feel I can sort of pick up the phone and speak to any time of the night or day. But I'm very aware of the fact, passage of years, you become aware of the fact that not everybody is as lucky as that. And some people genuinely find it difficult to go and talk to someone else. And the answer to virtually any problem, any issue that one might face in life, I found it difficult. I sat back and tried to think of something which Vinita perhaps hadn't covered in this book. Something that we sort of grapple with as human beings on a daily basis, at different levels. Sometimes at a very simple level, little problems that we have. Sometimes at a much bigger, more philosophical level. And I genuinely couldn't come up with anything that had been left out. So it's a friend. It's a go-to sort of thing, a resource that's there for you, regardless of what you might be facing and whatever it is that you need support with. And I couldn't recommend it more. I think most of you have already bought the book, so I'm not sitting here trying to sell it or sell more copies of it. I'm just telling you from the bottom of my heart what I felt. I wanted to start by reading. The thing with something called, a word like wisdom, is that I imagine a nice, sweet old man, long, flowing white beard, gentle eyes, and I thought, it wouldn't be very fair in some ways to use a word like that to describe Vinita, who was so glamorous and so gorgeous. But that was the word that kept popping into my head. It was wise and pragmatic. I think some of these words have already been mentioned in connection with the book on stage by the other people. But it's sort of so sane and so full of what is unfortunately often considered a weakness, which is kindness. And I think this kind of flows out of Vinita's columns. This is very, very sort of deeply kind of thoughtful person who's written this. And I wanted to ask Vinita where all of that comes from. She's not old, she doesn't have a long flowing white beard. Where does it come from, Vinita? You just learned it along the way?
Even when I grow old, I do hope I don't grow a long flowing beard. This is exactly why you love your own book launches, because you get to hear such wonderful things about yourself really, and a different perspective. Like Jaishree and I became friends only lately. We've not known each other very long, and yet there is that deep bond between us where we can talk to each other about just anything. And a lot of time I meet a lot of people who seem to know me very well, and they meet me like they've known me for ages. And when I draw a blank, I realize they've been reading my columns. And so they feel that they know me inside out, and they know me pretty well. I really don't know I mean, I don't know how to answer the question that you asked me. When I write it down, I don't think of it as wisdom. I just think of it like, and I'm very scared when I write it also, because when you're thinking something and you're putting it down on paper and you know that a lot of people are going to be reading it, you feel highly responsible. And that responsibility is very scary, because you don't want to say anything which will mislead somebody. And then when the responses over the years started flowing in and people seemed to be able to relate with what I was saying, I think I gained confidence. And I would really say that what I write is not just what I think, but what a lot of my friends, when I interact with them, a lot of people who talk to me, it all comes from all around, really. And it's very strange, yeah, Jaishree, you know, as a writer, as a novelist, a lot of authors tell you that when you start writing a novel, when you start writing fiction, after some time, the characters take over and they dictate what is to be written. So you don't know, so you just go into, and it happens with me very often. And I've really not admitted this before, but it does happen very often that sometimes I feel I go off into a kind of a trance when I'm writing. And I would never have said it earlier, but now I've heard a lot of other authors say it too, that it happens to them. And it's almost as if somebody else is writing. So it's, I think, and when I read Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, lately, she talks about this, that, there's this creativity in the air and you just partake of it when you're very intensely passionate about something. And so I guess what I write is part of what you think as well, and what everybody else around us thinks all the time.
It is something that a lot of creative writers say, but I've only ever heard creative writers saying that. So it's quite surprising and also a little bit intriguing that someone who writes something that's more hooked into real life feels the same way. So I just want to read a couple of lines from your introduction to the book, because that also brought up a little question in my mind. What you say is, the column brings readers face to face with the questions that have been playing in their subconscious minds, actively seeks answers, and hopefully offers some solace as well. I mean, we're all aware of this, we've all enjoyed the column, and I think we've all derived some form of comfort at some point. So the role the column plays is that of a mirror and a friend, a philosopher, an analyst, and guide. Ozone is a throbbing living entity, not just for my readers, and this was the bit that was me, but for me too, you say. I continue to learn as much from this column as it gains from me and my thoughts and experiences. What is that? What is it that you continue to learn, and how does that process, how does that work?
See, as any journalist will tell you, that when you have a deadline to write to, you force yourself to think and you force yourself to write, because you have to write and you cannot get away from that. So every week when I have to do an ozone, and I know what ozone is all about, I have to think about topics that people can relate to and think about. I sit down and I force myself to think, and when almost all through the week when I'm talking to people, meeting others, moving around, going through experiences, my column is always at the back of my mind. So it has sharpened my observational skills. It has sharpened given a kind of focus to my thoughts, and that's why I think my column is my greatest teacher. And it's funny, but when my children at home sometimes, for instance, if I shout at them or if I get upset with the workers at home or something, they'll come up to me and say, "Mom, you write all that stuff in ozone, and is this really you?" And that, you stop suddenly and you think, okay, I mean, yes, I do write this stuff, but am I really implementing it in my real life? So when a lot of people say, "Oh, your columns, they're so wise, you're a really wise woman," and I say, not at all. This is what I would like to be.
Before we move on to the columns, there was just one little bit that I wanted to read, but then I think we've already covered some of that ground in the earlier part of the evening. But it's on a subject that it's very dear to my heart as well. It's an an entire novel celebrating friendship. So this is a column called "The Best Mirror is an Old Friend." I thought that was wonderful. It just expresses it so well. What do you look for in a friend? Designers Sudeep Verma and Ravi Bajaj have been friends for decades. In the cutthroat world of fashion, where they occupy the same competitive space, these two men have formed a mature bond, realizing there is space for everyone. Suneet says, "I never think about our friendship, it's just there, like growing up with a brother. Sometimes we talk a lot, sometimes we don't. At times we share meaningful dialogue, otherwise we have meaningless exchanges, but the connection is always there." For Ravi, friendship is a deep investment, and he has high expectations of his friends. I'm a very demanding friend, but I'm also willing to give back as much. Sunit and I are complete opposites, and maybe that works for us. I learn from the way he values family and is so demonstrative. He can make people feel good, and I value that in him. Now, I just thought this was a lovely tribute to your two chief guests, and it speaks volumes about why you
And
invited
she
them.
found it herself. I mean, I did not find this out. I had even forgotten that it's in this book.
And it comes right towards the end of the book, so that was proof that I read the whole thing. Now, on to the columns. Now, this is, the columns really is what I was starting to think of them as I went along as handy little pep pills or something that I could pop whenever I was, in need of counsel. But I thought there's a whole, well, not only as I said, there's just so many different subjects that you cover, but I thought you were particularly good on the subject of marriage. I don't know whether these were the ones that were speaking to me, but the subject of marriage and long-term relationships, you do that so well, and you explain things so well, and you break it down into easy to understand steps, and I thought particularly for young people, because in some ways, I mean, I think there's lots of advice for people who are in long-term relationships, but there's also so much that is there for people who are about to embark on that very important step. So I wanted to read from this bit here. Love is indeed blind. Do you remember? Do you know all your lines as they flow along? Or,
Like I said, sometimes when I read my column, it's like reading somebody else's writing, really. So it's like a kind of a reintroduction to my own thoughts.
Rose-tinted happily ever after images and fairy tales and romantic fiction spoil us for the real thing. So if you've been brought up on the raging passions and skyrocketing big O's of Mills and Boone, or on stories of a Prince Charming who carries girls away on white steeds, your real-life romance has fizzled out even before it's got a chance to sizzle. However, don't lose heart. This is not to say that love cannot happen. It can and does, but only to those of us who believe in it and make the effort to build it for ourselves. Note, not find love, but to build or create it for yourself. Most make the mistake of looking for that one man or that one woman who's perfect for them. There is no such thing as a perfect soulmate. There could be any number of them, and so long as they fulfill your basic criteria, all is good. I just loved that line. Note, not find love, but to build or create it for yourself. Because I think that's a bit that many of us kind of generally miss out on. It's easy to look at a happily married couple and think they're not lucky or blessed or something, but you're very adept at pointing out that this is hard-earned happiness, isn't it? Let's just read one more paragraph. As you mentioned, a friend and a mother of two might well be in the audience, who has a habit of looking adoringly at her husband, shooting indulgent smiles, stroking his cheek. Believe it or not, the man is in a state of constant adoration for his wife. Then you say, I refuse to believe that in their decade-long marriage they haven't had problems or haven't seen the worst of each other. But what they have done is chosen to focus on what they love and express it openly, rather than try to improve what they don't like. And it works fabulously for them.
Well, yes, it's true. Actually, I did write about a friend, and she uses this gesture very consciously. At least she started using it very consciously, where she feels that to show that love and affection to her husband keeps him excited always and keeps him happy. And what I've tried to say in this column is that I do believe that love and romance is something that we can whip up and build up for ourselves. It's not something that you just go around looking for. And a lot of people do make this mistake of waiting for a long time for the perfect man or the perfect woman to come into their lives. And if you have preconceived notions and great expectations of someone, you are bound to, not find success in a relationship or in a marriage. I think it is the best thing is that you have to make do with what you have, what you get. And you can, and so long, like I said, so long as the basic requirements are met, like if you would have basic requirements, you would say that okay, I will not marry a man who is, say, uncouth or who doesn't dress well and all. So those basic things, so long as they are met, I think you can. Marriage is also a lot about closing your eyes to certain realities that are unpalatable, as it is about making the most of those realities which are attractive to you. And if you've learned how to do that and balance that out in your life, I think you can have a good relationship. imagination holds you in good stead. As I've said in this column, I've remembered that close your eyes, imagine yourself totally in love with your spouse or your partner. Whip up that passion and that affection, look towards him with those love-laden eyes and watch the reaction. I mean, how can he not react? Or how can she not respond?
It's very pragmatic and it's very sensible. But the business of making do, of sort of deciding that now this is what I've been given and this is what I will manage with and I'm going to have to build on this because I have no option. Does that appeal to younger people? Do you get anyone sort of writing to you saying this, I'm entitled to more? Thinking has changed. We're less accepting, even here in India where social expectations kind of keep you together.
It's just coming back to, I did not really mean that you make do with what you have in the sense if you're unhappy or whatever. I'm just saying that you can create that happiness for yourself in a marriage if you really get down to it and if you have the right intention. I think it's very important in any relationship, whether it is a marriage or friendship, that you're allowed to be yourself and you're allowed to grow. And when that starts getting affected, that's when no kind of a relationship will work, whether it is a marriage, a love relationship or a friendship. And I would say that if there is abuse in a marriage, if there's domestic abuse, if there is substance abuse, or if you're not allowed to grow as an individual and your growth is being stymied, I wouldn't say make do with those kind of marriages. And that's where you need to step out, and make some noise about it. And coming to the younger generation, this is a topic that came up for discussion in another forum recently. I do feel that the younger generation is very focused on what they want to do and what they want to achieve in life. And they're very focused on their freedom and their space not being interfered with. And that is very important to them in any relationship. They find it easier to break up and move on from a relationship than we did.
Right.
Because they feel that the way I want to be, I want to grow to my own full potential and I want to do in life what I want to do, that is far more important. Love is possibly something that I can find again and again and again. So I feel that they are easier able to give that.
Changing. Would you say that much of the advice you give in this will start becoming relevant to younger people as the world changes, as India changes?
Yes, it could be, but surprisingly, I get a lot of youngsters because when I write, I'm writing more for people our age and already into relationships or probably singles who are kind of well settled into their singledom. But I get a lot of youngsters writing into me and contacting me, people from colleges, high school, telling me that they read the column and they really follow it. And so I also feel that it is a way, again, it's a huge responsibility, a way of kind of passing down that wisdom to the next generation. Now, whether they take it or not, that's entirely up to each individual.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised to hear that because I think young people are confused. They actually desire many of the things that our generation sought as well. So, this is one very good way in, because they're not going to take it from their parents. So it's much easier for them to read the newspaper and sort of look out for what you might say the following week. Staying with the subject of long-term relationships, I also like very much this column of yours which was about suspicion and trust. I know that you remember it, Lisa. But you say here, it is all about faith in your spouse, yes, but even more faith in your own self and in the relationship that you have built. Constant suspicion and insecurity are the hallmark of those who depend on others to give meaning to their lives. Self-confident people take responsibility for their own emotional states, and their self-reliance is a source of attraction for others. On the other hand, insecure people ultimately manage to drive away even those close to them with constant haranguing and suspicion. Suspicion is a silent, sullen killer that erodes a relationship more than anything else. With the surety and fatality of a time bomb, it ticks on insidiously until it goes off in your face one day, destroying all. Remember Shakespeare's Othello? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that now.
I will say that I think I write much better than I speak. It seems to sound so much better when you're reading that out rather than what I'm adding to it.
But yeah, when people sort of write to you, and I'm assuming a lot of people write to you in response to what you might have said, because it very often feels like you're speaking directly to the person. That's your style, I think.
Yes, but yeah, that's true. But like I would like to say about this what I've written here, it's a very idealistic kind of a notion, not to feel suspicious and rely on yourself. And I mean, that's something that everybody should aspire to do. But I don't know how many of us, including me, are really like that.
There was, sorry, I'm sort of going off a little bit at a tangent here because there was, we were talking about the more creative side of you and how you're also changing and evolving and developing. We've heard about your journey from the fashion world to page 3 and writing there and so on. And I think there's a lot more to come. And what made me think about that was actually this particular column, which is called, it comes very early on, it's page 21, it says, and then my heart with pleasure fills. That's very poetic. But this is, I think you were in Hyderabad and you were standing on a balcony and you write this. I bet you remember.
I remember, it sounds very good, yes.
As I stand and move closer to the edge of the balcony, a couple of buildings on either side disturb my vision. So I narrow my gaze to block these out and focus on the beauty laid out before me, as if for my sole pleasure. Yes, it almost feels like this belongs to me, my little magical patch. When I leave Hyderabad, I know I will carry back the scene in my mind and heart for me to draw upon and get absorbed in for a sense of tranquility, healing and happiness. My personal version of Wordsworth's Nodding Daffodils. For oft when on my couch I lie vacant or in pensive mood. Like his daffodils, this scene will flash upon that inward eye which is the bliss of solitude. A bird sails past on the wings of the breeze, another flaps its wings laboriously against the wind. I prepare to get up reluctantly in order to descend into the city and pause as the air reverberates with the muezzin's call for prayers to the faithful who are observing Ramzan nowadays. The sound of azan or call for namaz rises in waves from a mosque nestled amidst a cluster of houses about a kilometer away from my balcony. Even as the sound of azan recedes and approaches with the direction of the wind, temple bells ring forth and a priest from an adjoining temple clears his throat noisily on the mic before launching into Om Jai Jagdish Hari. For a while I can hear both appointees in the house of God invoking their God simultaneously, their words an interesting jumble. From above it sounds blissfully like a happy secular coexistence. Now is this a different Vinita to the ones who wrote the other columns? There's a poet in there, a creative writer. I thought this is probably where she's headed next.
Well, I think ask any student of English literature and they've written poetry at some point or the other in their lives. I don't write poetry, but yes, sometimes when you are deeply affected by something, as you would know as a writer, just plain prose isn't enough. And when it comes straight from the soul, I remember when I wrote this column, I was very upset about something. And I had to write the column, and I tried to not allow myself to not skip a column. I don't allow myself to skip a column as much as possible. So I had to write the column, and I was extremely upset about something. So I kind of, was just sitting at the balcony and looking outside, and there were 2 trees on either side of the balcony, and I was observing them, and then kind of just started thinking about. There was this the call of the muezzin came, and it was something that pierced the air, and then the wind changed and suddenly I heard temple bells from somewhere. So this kind of a thing, when you're in that kind of mood, makes you kind of philosophical. And when you are like that, I really enjoyed writing this column. I think it helped me a lot. It helped me feel so much better. And that's another thing about writing, which a lot of people here who are artists, we have artists, singers sitting here. We have a beauty artist sitting here, Mrs. Hussain, and a lot of artists will tell you that when you are really upset and then something comes straight from your soul, and when you completed a good piece of work, be it singing, be it something you've created in whatever field you are, you feel so good about yourself and you get onto a high. And it gives you a completely new feeling about yourself, and you've got over that bad patch and moved on to something else, which is completely different. I think my writing helps me do that. Cooking does as well. Sometimes when I've finished writing a column, I feel like jumping up and dancing, and sometimes I even do a little twirl and all, and my kids think I'm crazy.
But I find that fascinating because as a creative writer, that's exactly what I do. I'm grappling with a problem. What I do is write about it, and it kind of resolves. I'd never thought of column writers doing the same thing, because I don't know, you expect column writers to be Why? It's beyond that.
Want to write, and I think in fact when you've written bits and pieces from your own life in your books, and I think there are certain places in there which are peculiarly poetic. In fact, what I found very fascinating in some of your books is that when you are writing something very poignant, your wit shines through, and I find that beautiful. I mean, to be able to smile and laugh when you are upset and going through something which is giving you grief. To be able to make another laugh with a turn of phrase and something that you say isn't really
typical of Vinita. We're here to talk about her book, and she's managed to turn it around to my book.
No,
I know you just finished reading one.
Yeah, no, but I'm really
very
telling you
generous
that
of you.
I'm coming back to myself and telling you that is exactly how I feel too. So when I was feeling very low, and I think you really create better stuff when you're feeling low and you're sad.
Yeah.
You
and I found another connect, Vinita, between that book of mine, which I know you just finished reading, so I know there's been no
Ancient
pinching.
Promises.
There's been no pinching going on, and I haven't pinched anything from you,
Yeah.
and you haven't pinched it from there. But this was so similar to the first page of Ancient Promises, and I actually wanted to end our interaction with this, because it is about endings. And I can see Monique saying, and I'm very conscious that there will be people here who want to talk to you and engage with you as well. So just a little reading from this wonderful column, I thought it was. It's called, Do You Never Begin Because You Fear the End? Not fearing the end doesn't mean not being aware of it. All things, good or bad, end. And this too shall pass is a wonderful principle to live by. So long as we are aware that all states of life, as well as mind, are temporary, we achieve equanimity and a balanced life. If only one understood that all happiness, grief, success, and failure are temporary phenomena. In sad times, we would bide our time till they end. In happier ones, we would be more balanced and empathetic towards the less fortunate. And the very last paragraph says, and so, if in the beginning lies the end, it is important to understand that in every end there lies a better, more promising beginning. The end of childhood is the beginning of a promising adult life. Ending of passion in a marriage can be the beginning of abiding love and care. The end of novelty in a friendship can lead to a new cycle of maturity. The end of one assignment means you move on to another with more value addition. Bravo. I thought that was fantastic. And I think it's a good place to kind of bring our own interaction to an end, with the assurance that in this end as well, there is a beginning of the Q&A. So anyone with burning questions can raise their hands. Is there a roving microphone? We've got somewhere, some way by which people can make themselves heard.
I think we just speak up, we'll hear you probably till the dynamite.
You said that in the writing process, there is a point when you feel that the writers start dictating to you what you should write. But I am of the opinion that it's the other way around. Because the plot and the characters are created by the writer. Because you have visualized them before you have written the book. And it is you who make the characters come out alive by showing the way you want to show them. So to say that the characters dictate what you should write is really, maybe you meant it was a metaphor or...
No, I really meant it in a way that I've spoken to a lot of fiction writers, and I haven't written fiction really as yet. But they all say that, most of them say that the characters seem to take on a life of their own. And life of their own doesn't mean that they pop out of there and get a soul and they become real human beings. But I think that's the role of the creative imagination. And when you, I like to use the word that you go into a kind of a daze, because you are in that creative space where it's not just you who's writing, but everything in the universe kind of comes together. And there's a creative outpouring, which a lot of artists talk about. So you seem to be plucking things from there, and it really becomes like the characters gain a life of their own, and they are dictating to you, because you are in that daze when you're
Yes.
Hi.
Congratulations on your book.
Thank
When
you.
I was reading the title, Love is Always Right, what came to my mind was that is it not contradictory to the real concept of love, which is love is blind?
I don't think it's contrary to that, because I feel that love should be blind, and you can only really love when you have the capacity to turn a blind eye as well. You have to be able to, you see, when you're in the first throes of love, at that point, you highlight the advantages, the positive points of a person, and you're able to overlook the negatives. So if we were able to do that all through our lives, with our lovers, our spouses, we would be in love forever. It's only that after some time you start focusing on the negatives as well, and which is why you kind of fall out of love. So love is forever, and love is always right if you turn a blind eye to some of the things.
So you don't think marriage gives its sight? You don't think that's true?
Marriage
Love is blind and marriage gives its sight?
She made that right.
No, well, yes, if maybe that is why, because marriage gives its sight, that's exactly put very rightly, that's why probably it falls along the way.
Vinita, like the West, therapy is very important for a lot of people. We somehow shirk from therapy. Do you think that the creative columnist like yourself comes closest to a therapist which Indian readers or Indian audiences actually need?
Yeah, very interesting. I have in the beginning of my career, somehow or the other, because I used to always be interested in writing on relationships, I would always get attracted to, I was editor Saturday Times, and I would always end up writing on relationships, and we also had a column called Mars and Venus. Very often I would get people in the office itself, department, come up to me and tell me their secrets and want to figure out, take advice from me, and maybe that is what built me up into doing this column which I'm doing today, Ozone. I really don't know, but yes, I think that is a way of picking up advice if you have a column like that, which is talking about relationships, which is talking about marriage, and also talking about things like who am I, what am I doing in this world, am I really honest, like one of my columns asks. So if I were to ask you, Jackie, are you honest? You will say yes. If I say, are you really, really honest? Then you'll have to think about it. So those are the kind of questions which this column raises, and these are questions which should have, occurred to us at some point or the other, but the answers are very difficult to get. And I'm not saying that the columns give you the answers, but at least they make you think through the answers, and I like to leave it kind of open-ended because I don't want to thrust any answer down anyone's throat. So for people who are looking for anonymity and getting some advice without really revealing themselves and their identities, maybe such a column would help a lot.
Excuse me, hi, Neeraj here. As a writer, how do you deal with self-doubt? I mean, one day you write a beautiful article, a beautiful story, a beautiful piece of fiction, you twirl around, you say, wow, it's fantastic. And the next day when you read it, not so great. So how do you deal with self-doubt as a creative person, not just a writer?
Yeah. You are one of our Write India winners.
Yes.
Yes. One of our Write India winners for the short story contest that we have.
Congratulations.
And we have some of them sitting here in the audience as well. It kind of happens the other way around with me. Very often I write a column and I send it off and I am really feeling very upset, and I think, oh God, what have I done? Why did I even send this column to press? It's so bad. What will people think when it comes out, and how can I make amends and all? And then that column comes out. Very often it happens that people appreciate that column most of all. I don't know how it happens really. It's when I have the most self-doubt that people seem to love that column. And this is something I really need to figure out. Maybe I need a shrink to figure out why this happens.
Seeing themselves in the color.
Maybe I don't know really, because so it's like kind of happened that way. But knowing that I've written a very good column and then being upset with it has not really happened to me, because it takes me a lot to be happy with myself. I kind of doubt myself before I send it off. So if I'm happy with it, it means that I'm actually happy. And then even if I get doubts from outside, I know that what I've written is, and that's one thing that we were discussing the other day, and one of the columns in my book is about regrets. I feel that we should not have any regrets at all in life, and we should work on that. It's very important, because regrets are killing. They kind of sear the soul if you regret anything in life. And how not to have any regrets is, what do we regret mostly? We regret not paying enough attention to our education, maybe, not paying enough attention, not giving enough focus to finding the right career or the right partner for ourselves, or not being able to give enough time to our loved ones. Those are the regrets people have towards the end of their lives. So if we know that these are the kind of regrets, then when we are making these decisions and we have these choices, I think we should just be far more alert and aware that we are making a choice that we have to live with, and then live with it you must, with a sense of responsibility, and don't regret it because you've made that choice because of a certain set of circumstances, which has changed, may have changed, but at that time that was what it was. Good one.
Just to say a short word about how universal your writing is. My wife and I have given nearly everybody you know your book, your first book, It's Your Life. Yeah, everybody, all our friends from all over the world have enjoyed it, so it's not just a local thing. And I think I look forward to doing the same with your second book. But as for the the comment about the book dictating the author, I'm reminded by what I'm reminded of what Tolstoy said about Pushkin. When he was speaking about Anna Karenina, he said that Pushkin had said that he was always surprised that Tatiana had rejected Onegue. So she took over that book. And I wonder, I have the same feeling in your writing. You may not know where you end when you begin.
You know, Gudmundur was the ambassador of Iceland to India, and he was kind enough when my first book came out, It's Your Life. I think that was one of the most beautiful interactions that I had over the book. He invited close friends to his house, and all of us went there, and each one of them already had a copy of my book. He sent them the books across to them. They'd read the books and come for the interaction, and we all sat and we discussed issues from the book. And I remember one issue that was discussed there which came up. We talked about how love that is not returned. So, and I felt very strongly that you can only love somebody who loves you back. And if the person doesn't love you back, after some time your love kind of, fizzles away. And you cannot keep loving someone who doesn't love you back at all. And there were two young girls there in the group who insisted and said, no, we love someone who has never loved us back and who will never love us back. But we love him with the same intensity and passion that we would have loved someone who would have loved us back. I couldn't believe it, so we went on and discussed it for a long time, and I really remember that interaction for that. I wish we could do something like that again.
You love the same guy?
Not that. Have the interaction that we did at the Gundur's.
We didn't exactly have been sitting next to each other.
I have a question. I wanted to ask you that, women authors like Sylvia Plath and Virginia Woolf, they've had such intense love. So, I'm like, how do you define that kind of love? And they end up committing suicide. I mean, I'm not saying that one should do that. But what kind of love is that? That sort of creativity.
It must be a beautiful love, and it really must be that's something worth it for you to be able to, I wouldn't even say they wasted away their lives. They took them to the heights of creativity and made them what they are, and they're remembered till today. I think it's not just the love, it is more your own creative churnings which take you to that, and how you deal with them. So, and love, romance is just a part of that, because that's just one aspect of life. You get to focus on it far more because it's the most dramatic thing and there's another interaction with someone. But I do feel that it's the creative churnings of the mind and the way you deal with them, which either, and I think most of us in India, we kind of, Jaishree, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, but we don't even allow our emotions to flow out completely as they should and as they would. We are always kind of, putting the lid on them.